everyone. Welcome to the LACNETS meeting, September 22nd. We are so happy to be here at the Cancer Support Community in West Los Angeles. This group was actually the very first location for the wellness community, which then merged with Gilda's organization and is now the Cancer Support Community. So thank you to them for hosting us today. We have a very special guest, and it's so appropriate that we are here in this space. Please welcome Michael States, who is a psychotherapist and also is a clinical director for 21 years at the Cancer Support Community here in West LA. And Michael has a very special way of working with groups, and she was with us at the conference that we had in May, and we're taking this opportunity to talk about cancer in the family and the psychosocial impact, the emotional impact, and basically all the time that we are not with the doctors and how we manage stress around our diagnosis. So please welcome Michael States.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. And as we're starting, one of the things that, whether you were diagnosed 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, or 20 years ago, one of the things that I would pretty much be willing to bet is that every single one of you remembers that moment when somebody said you have cancer or your loved one has cancer. In that moment, everything changes. And for whether you're watching at home in your jammies, or you happen to be in a hospital bed, or you're with friends and family, to be watching this on your own, what I want you to know is that as things change over time, that whether you can see them or not, there are people in this room, and no matter what, you are not alone. There is a whole group that really does get it. And so there are people for you to talk to, and Giovanna just talked about an online private way for each of you to connect, and whether it's through a support group or finding others to talk to one-on-one, or coming to a group in your area. And she mentioned the Cancer Support Community, and which is near and dear to my heart. And one of the things for any of you really throughout the whole Southern California area, but also in San Francisco, there are cancer support communities in multiple locations. They all have all kinds of groups and support and ways for you to connect with others who really do get it, whether you're a caregiver or a person diagnosed with cancer. And so in that moment that somebody says you have cancer, everything changes. And it is, the title of this, Cancer in the Family, it's like a mobile. And so when one person is diagnosed, literally everything shifts. Nothing is ever the same again. It may be better in some ways, it may bring intimacy and connections that you didn't have, it brings fear, it brings questions, and both patient and family member, loved one, whoever your support system is, goes through a similar kinds of questioning. What's going to happen to me? What does this mean? What do I think about illness? And this brings about something really important too, which is to look at your own attitudes and beliefs about a diagnosis of cancer or a chronic or life-threatening illness. Where did that come from in your family? Does it mean everyone dies? Well, we know that there are 12 million cancer survivors out there today. Does it mean that I can't ask for help? What's that like for you to ask for help? In our various families, asking for help, does that mean you're vulnerable? Does that mean you should be able to do it better? You should be able to do it alone. And asking for help is one of the things that people often find the most difficult. And so you might want to revisit that cultural or familial lens that you learned in your family and say, is that really true? How, if at all, is that helpful? If I ask for help, how does that benefit me? How does that benefit my loved one? The experience of it the experience of a diagnosis, whether it's pain, whether it's fatigue, whether it's shame, whether it's blame, who's going to take care of me, who's going to take care of my family. These are universal questions. Again, it's a family disease. This is not unique to the person who's been diagnosed. Everyone experiences this in some way. For those of you who have been diagnosed, again, attitudes and beliefs, sense of self. What does that say to you about you in terms of asking for help? That sense of body betrayal. You've been healthy all your life, you've eaten all your life, you've eaten well, you've exercised, and here you are with this diagnosis, and the sense of betrayal, the sense of loss is not uncommon. It's the talking about it. It's knowing that you're not alone and walking in other shoes, that people who do get it. And it may not be true. The loss of dependence. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people talk about being damaged goods. You're not damaged goods. This, in fact, there is a way, as perverse as this sounds, to make meaning out of this experience. And there are moments when that seems absolutely impossible, and it is in that moment. But is there a way to make meaning by expanding your perception of yourself beyond the physical, beyond whatever your job definition has been, to look at yourself in a larger context in terms of who am I? Who am I at my core? Who am I in my wholeness? What are the things that truly matter? And integrating those as a part of your view of yourself. Control is a really important link. What are the things that you can control? The most significant psychosocial stressors of a diagnosis of cancer are unwanted aloneness, loss of hope, loss of control. Those, if I may borrow from what was the original wellness community, cancer support community, were defined by Harold Benjamin, who was the founder of the original wellness community. Unwanted aloneness, loss of hope, loss of control. And then if you look at those, first of all, there is no such thing as loss of hope. There is no such thing as false hope. You may feel it in that moment, and things may change over time, because this is not linear. This is the trajectory of a diagnosis of cancer is a roller coaster. But there are always things one can hope for. There is the possibility of not being alone, unwanted aloneness. Are you isolating? What can you do about that? And I'm putting questions out there as you're sitting and watching this or listening to it, for you to begin to explore within yourselves, what might you do? What are the ways in which you can address this differently? How can you talk to family and friends about this? How do you want to talk to family and friends about this? Because not everybody wants to hear it in the same way, and you may not want to talk about it in the same way. In terms of hope and what you can hope for, that will in fact change over time. If it's a day when you feel like crud and the most you can hope for is to get from the bathtub to the kitchen table and take a nap in between, that's okay. You know, that's what you can hope for that day. If it's an upcoming birthday, if it's some special thing that you want to build your energy toward, then you can hope for that. It may be a treatment that's going to come along, and in all of my years in terms of doing this, and for those of you who have been dealing with this and fighting this and working with for many, many years, you know what's come into the fray in terms of new treatments, new protocols, new ways of looking at things, and integrating integrative medicine, nutrition, and it's another way you can take back control, mind-body techniques, and we'll play a little bit later with some stress reduction and ways to deal with side effect management, pain management, preparing for scans, all of those kinds of things. You can take back control. You may not always be able to control the outcome, but a sense of regained control, even in small measures, changes the quality of your life. Your vitality begins to be meaningful again. And if you think about being in the present moment, making meaning out of this moment, the reality is, while you're looking at it through the lens of a diagnosis of cancer, none of us know what the next moment is. So if you make meaning out of this moment, the truth is this is the only moment you've got anyway. Why not embrace it? Make it your own. Define it in a way that's meaningful to you. And it's interesting that there are so many small moments that we miss. Giovanna mentioned Embracing the Forest. What was the name of that book?
Forest bathing.
Forest bathing. If you were to take a moment, walk into a forest, walk into your backyard, walk into a park, sit on the ground, lean against a tree and feel the presence of that earth presence, that presence of the tree, that presence of the breeze moving through the pores of your body like a breeze through a screen. That's a moment that you can embrace that gives meaning to being present. The other thing I mentioned is embracing the moment in a different way, looking forward to things. There is no such thing as false hope. One of the myths of cancer is that everybody dies, or that life stops with a diagnosis of cancer. It doesn't. Life goes on. You see it in your friends around you. Life does not stop. Birthdays still come up. Kids still have parties. Your kids need you if you have small children at home. Your family needs you. You may have a revised work schedule, but life doesn't stop. And if you allow life to stop, then your life is being guided and defined by your diagnosis. Cancer is something that is happening in your life or the lives of someone that you love. It is not who you are. And I'm going to say that one more time because I think it's so easy to make that tip over into that other side. Life does not stop with the diagnosis of cancer. It does not define you. It is something that is happening, but it is not who you are. So you're still this whole person. It is one aspect. It may guide you while you're deciding on treatment and talking to doctors, but it doesn't have to be the whole thing. One of the things that goes back to something that occurred 1,000,000 years ago when I was doing groups at the community that I will never forget. There was a board member who had been at Manzanar, and for those who don't know, Manzanar was one of the internment camps here in California during the Second World War. And this was a very young man. He was actually a child when the internment camps came about. And his family was whisked away to the internment camps. And their whole lives changed in that moment. And he told the story. He actually became one of the first Japanese Americans to ever graduate from UCLA, and started a whole bunch of other things in the city of Los Angeles. But in that moment, when this family, including young children, were in this small little house in Manzanar, his father said to him, "Don't focus on the fence that surrounds us. Focus on the mountains beyond the fence." And that is an opportunity and a way to think about making meaning out of this journey. It isn't the fence, it is what you can make of the fence, how you choose to experience. That's also about taking back some control. How do you choose to experience this? And with that, you know, it's also an issue of building trust. There are things that you can do to take back control. Look at your resources. Know what the new treatments are. Know what the resources are. Think about exercise. Think about nutrition. And exercise may be walking from your house to the mailbox. That's a lot. That's enough. That's what you can do in that moment. Being enough and loving that part of you that is enough. And so, thinking about that, we're going to take just a moment, because self-care is such an important part of this. And I will say this because so many of us grew up hearing, go out and do something. Don't sit and read a book. Don't take a nap. Self-care is not selfish. I always threaten to tattoo every person I ever work with that's on their forehead. Self-care is not selfish. It is a part of staying healthy. It is a part of making meaning. And so, with that, recognize the myths of cancer. They're just not true. Take a moment now, for just a moment, all the time in the world, and just stop and close your eyes and let yourself feel and honor yourself. Know that you are enough. And to know what parts of this may be important. The communication between you and your loved ones. Vital and important. That's how this happens. There are so many things that are left unsaid. And we do it to protect our loved ones, thinking that if we walk on eggs or we don't say it, we're protecting. And what that does is create distance at the very moment when intimacy is desired. Think about how you're talking about it. It's up to you. Be true to yourself. Stand in your own truth. Trust your own wholeness, that place within you that already knows everything you need to know. And most of all, know that at any given moment, you are enough. Look into the stress reduction. Look into mind-body. And even when you're tired, there is research that shows that exercise, even if it's walking to the mailbox, as counterintuitive as it sounds, makes a difference in terms of fatigue. Talk to your doctors about pain and fatigue. And I'm saying some things quickly because we have just a limited amount of time, and there may be perhaps other times for us to have further communication through the LACNETS site. I am so grateful that they have allowed me to do some of this with you today. There is a template for some guided imagery and ways in which you can do it for yourself that will be on their website, so that you can do that for yourself. So again, I thank you very much. I thank Giovanna and all of you for being here. And again, you are not alone. There are so many ways to find the resources, nourishment and support, spiritual, physical, emotional, whatever it is you need is available to you. Thank you.